Good evening. Welcome to Expat Insights. I'm your host Raju Mandhian. Here at Expat Insights, we take external views of internal successes of foreigners, expats and immigrants who have made Philippines their home, and they add to the economy or to the society. They all do good. Today it's a special day because we have a very special guest from England. He's been in this country for more than 30 years. He's a businessman and an actor. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Paul G. Holmes. Welcome to Expat Insights, Paul.
Thanks very much, Raju.
Paul, start telling us about what it is to be an Englishman in the Philippines.
I think most English people arrive here, as I did, with very little comprehension of the differences in culture which you learn about as you spend longer here, and maybe it's the same for you. And I'm sorry to say we arrive with certain cultural prejudices which we pretty soon learn to deal with and to get rid of. So for me it's been a matter of getting my sharp corners knocked off, I think, over a period of time. And when I see fresh arrivals from Britain here, and I think, yeah,
you're going to get it.
That was me 30 years ago. Yeah, you're going to learn. You're going to
so
learn.
What was the first experience? What was the first thing that said, hey, this is not my home base anymore?
Well, I've had two sojourns in the Philippines. The first, when I came here under a very different hat, when I had more hair too. And I was working in the field of population and education. And I lived in Cabanatuan City for more than 2 years. Got married while I was there. And that was where I had my school of hard knocks. That was where I really...
School of hard knocks. After the marriage, not before.
Well, I got married towards the end of my stay. You know, you sort of scout around and...
All right, Paul, I'm going to ask you about your married life, your business life and your acting life. But before we go in there, tell me a bit about England, the time when you were a boy. What was England like? Because there are viewers here who probably have had no experience of England. So can you paint a picture of England in the 1980s or 60s or 50s?
Or even 50s, yes.
Yeah.
I can probably paint a much clearer picture of Britain then than I could now, because I don't visit that often, fairly regularly, but with long periods in between. I grew up, went to boarding school before the age of 9. I think that's one thing that a Filipino would immediately take notice of. So I was away from home, really from before the age of 9 onwards.
Right.
Went to boarding school, was horribly unhappy for the first few weeks, miserable, but you gradually get used to it, and then you get to be really quite comfortable with being away from home. So first of all, my primary school and then high school, which is called public school in England.
In England,
when in fact it's a private school, but we call it public. And then on to university, again away from home. Then I went abroad. I was studying English literature at university, and at the end of all of that, I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And a friend who lived in the next street said,
were you in the city of London or some other?
I lived in London, yes, but
okay.
as I say, always went to school outside.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend said, well, look, I have this colleague of mine living in America at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and he's looking for people who are interested in population. Well, it just happened that although I was studying English, population was an interest of mine. I was interested in the environment. I was concerned about population growth. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try. So I sent in an application and was accepted. And back then, I think America had a great deal of money to throw around.
And you went to what state or what university?
I went to North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And that was a wonderful experience. I spent a couple of years there, took a master's degree.
Give me a little compare and contrast between life at home, as like with mom and dad and siblings, and life here in the Philippines, now that you have Filipino kids. How's the culture different? How is the ambience different?
Well, I've learned to put my elbows on the table when I'm eating.
Like this.
And all that stuff. And I've dropped a lot of the formality that I grew up with, I suppose. And I have to watch. I put ice in my beer, which
you never did back home.
In England, we'd have drunk the beer at room temperature anyway. Those are minor things. And apart from that, I don't know. I mean, we're all learners when we're parents.
Yeah.
You know, we learn as we go along, and so I pretty much played it by ear. I have two wonderfully cooperative daughters who are now grown up, and never had any trouble with them at all. One of them now lives in France, and the other one actually works with me in my business. And my wife, Gloria, has always been just as I think is often the case in the family, she's the sort of pillar of strength in the middle, around which the domestic activities revolve.
Right.
And so I've taken a lot of
cues
from her. She's the mother hen. Definitely saw herself as being the one who looked after the family. Now that they've grown up, she too works in the business. But
you've been married 30 years, and you've been around the mother hen
more
for 30.
than
Well,
I have my 36-year-old daughter proof of that.
You just said you've been in this country for 30 years.
But I also said that I had two sojourns here. So my first one was back in 1972. When that was, and I got married in 73. My eldest daughter was born in 74. So you add all that up, that's 36 years.
We've got 3 minutes coming up. We've got 3 minutes to go before we come to a break. Give me a picture of you, an Englishman, around a mother hen who's a Filipina. Describe her first, how lovely she is, how loving she is, and then tell me your life around her. How does that happen? Give me a picture of that.
Well, we've moved a long way from my first struggling attempts to recognize my role
let the
as
mother hen be a
breadwinner.
mother hen.
Let her be the mother hen. I think. Oh well, no. I mean, she's. I mean, I think the main thing that I've appreciated is that she's allowed me a lot of freedom, and I think freedom is one thing that perhaps brought me to the Philippines in the first place.
Yeah.
The feeling that British society was very constrictive, and that I would only be a very small fish in a very large pond.
Right. That makes sense.
So coming here, well, I never realized that I would become an actor, among other things. I hoped there would be opportunities. But suddenly I found myself auditioning for a part in a play.
Oh, you're a big fish in very small lake.
Well, it was certainly better. The ratio was better than it had been in England.
It was just one.
But you see, but Claude, to keep on that subject, I mean, she let me do it. She never said. Has never actually ever said.
I'm glad you use this statement. She let me do it.
She let me do it. If she said no, you can't, I don't know where we would have gone from there. But maybe she saw sense in give him enough rope, if not to hang himself, at least to run around and have at least a pretense of freedom.
Oh, that's enough. Because all the world's a stage, isn't it?
Thank you.
All right. So thanks, Paul. We'll take a break, and we're coming back with Paul Holmes. This is really an interesting conversation. Paul will tell us how it is to run a business in the Philippines and how is it to be an actor, plus some more. So hang in with us, and this is your host, Raju Mandian, and you're at Expat Insights. Welcome back to Expat Insights. I'm your host, Raju Mandian. We are still with Paul G. Holmes, but before we go to him, I just want to share a secret. I understand English when the Latinos speak English. I understand English when the French speak English. I also understand Australian English. But sometimes I cannot understand the English that the English speak. Don't tell this to Paul, but just eavesdrop on this conversation. Paul, can you just tell us about your business here in the Philippines? I hear you make handicrafts for animals. Can you tell us a bit about that?
When I came to the Philippines on my second sojourn,
yeah.
Which was 1977 or thereabouts.
Right.
I had just spent several, frankly, rather unhappy years with the United Nations. In the field of population, which was what I was involved in, I had left the Philippines with a wife and now one daughter, and joined UNESCO for a couple of years in Malaysia as advisor on population education. And then I spent another similar amount of time with the International Labour Organization in Thailand.
Yeah.
And I was getting promoted way beyond my competence.
Right.
I think that was really what was happening.
I don't know how that happens, but
And anyway, the whole thing came to an end, and I thought, right, that's the end of that. I'm not going to do any more of that. Thank you very much. Nor, however, did I want to go back to England. I felt no real desire at all to return to my native land. Not entirely sure why. But I did feel an urge to return to the Philippines. So what was I going to do? Well,
but you were already in touch with Doria by that time.
Yeah, we were married, and we lived together in both of these places. We had a kid, and we came back here, and I allowed myself a period of time with some accumulated money from my work with the UN to just look around and see what I could do.
Right.
And I discovered Philippine handicrafts, and I thought they were just the most wonderful thing.
Well, coming from your part of the world, they are the most wonderful things.
Well, actually, interestingly, there's a history in my family which goes back a century and a half to my great-grandfather, who came to this part of the world, actually to Japan.
Right.
From England, it seems like this part of the world. So anyway, he went to Japan and was buying what were then Japanese handicrafts, which became tremendously valuable, and he made a fortune. And I haven't done that.
Two generations ago.
Oh,
you're still on your way. Don't you worry about that.
So handicrafts, I thought, this is great. There was just one small problem. I knew absolutely nothing about business.
Nada. Yeah.
And so I thought, well, buy some handicrafts that you like. So I went to Zambales, I went to Bicol, I visited Cebu, I traveled around Luzon, collecting
samples.
Stuff, samples. I thought, these are the things that I'm going to sell in Europe.
And in those days, probably you spent 5 pesos, 10 pesos, 50 pesos.
Oh, yeah,
just like that. Yeah, I'm assuming 30 years ago.
And then in my naivety, in my ignorance, I put them in a couple of suitcases and set off for Europe.
Lovely.
And I had a nice time traveling around.
The English tradesman.
The English oh yes, not me at all, you see. But so I went to England, and I went to Germany, and I visited the Netherlands, and I went up to Sweden, and I really accomplished nothing.
How huge were these things?
Well, they weren't very big at all, but
they were light, because
they were light, of course, and they were bulky comparatively. They were baskets and little things. Very, very pretty, all hand done. But I mean, the question of, if somebody had come to me, as they might well have done, and said, "This is a wonderful."
This 70s.
This was in the
mid-70s.
In the late 70s.
Yeah.
Make me, 10,000 of these. I'm thinking particularly of a finely woven basket from Zambales. I just wouldn't have been able to do it. I wouldn't have had there just simply wasn't the production capacity. So then I got into something which was much more easily reproduced, which was buri furniture. And for several years we made and bought buri furniture, and that was the big craze back then, and everybody was doing it. But again, it wasn't my thing, and I wasn't really frightfully happy with that. Then we lucked into these environmentally friendly buri fiber animals. A supplier of ours came to me with I think it was a sheep made out of this
buri
fiber.
Buri is a kind of a grass.
It's a palm tree. It's a huge tall palm, the biggest palm in Southeast Asia. It grows to about 50 or 60 feet. And we just...
How different is that from abaca? Just for my knowledge.
No, we also use